Welcome to the Midweek message. We're taking some lessons from Ecclesiastes, and we're in chapter 7, and I'm reading verses 1 through 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 1, reading from the New International Version of the Bible. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Now we're going to look at these verses individually. Ecclesiastes 7:1. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. The wonderful privilege and honor and power that is in a good name, and what a wonderful thing it is to have. It is better than fine ointment, fine perfume. It is more valuable than something expensive, a good name. And then Solomon says, the day of death is better than the day of birth. And these next few words, couple of verses, have to do with sort of a dark theme that and this comes from Solomon's feeling of frustration with life and the vanity of pursuits, that even pursuits that people think are worthwhile on the surface. The day of death is better than the day of birth because, for one thing, when a person is born, they've not achieved anything yet. They may have a fruitless life. Solomon spoke to that point. Life is a challenge. Life is a struggle. But the day of death, and I think maybe he has in mind here the day of the death of a person who had a good name, lived a good life. That's better. Of course, and Solomon in some cases thinks that it'd be better not to even be born. So there's great frustration with life. Life is seen as vain in his eyes in Ecclesiastes. Frustration with living. Better to be dead than to be born. There are some people that despair of life even today. There are many people who wish they had not been born. Life is frustrating. Verse 2, it is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take it to heart. Everybody dies. Everyone departs the earth, and their manner of life is not completely in their control. Their manner of death is not in their control. Life is vanity, and everybody dies. The whole creation is subject to decay and destruction. Everybody dies. Keep that in mind as you live. Better to be thoughtful than to be vain and frivolous. Better to go to a house of mourning than a house of feasting. Take that to heart. Verse 3, frustration is better than laughter because a sad face is good for the heart. Often pain teaches us more than pleasure. And I think that's in mind when he says frustration's better than laughter. A sad face is good for the heart. We become more thoughtful in times of despair and in times of difficulty, and that can turn to our good. Verse 4, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. This is the same thing that's mentioned in 4 verses now, that mourning is more instructive than pleasure. And that's true in many ways, although given the choice, we would choose levity over being dour and sad. Verse 5, it is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Instructives from a wise life are better than the vanities of the frivolous. The Song of Fools. All of us learn in life that it's better to listen to a person that has your best interest at heart and has some experience in living, even when they've got a negative message for you, than just to simply ignore the happenings of life and live a life devoted to fun and devoted to pleasure. It's better to listen to wisdom, even though there be a rebuke therein. Listen to a wise person than to be involved with fools. Peer group is extremely important. Verse 6, like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Like a fire that's burning sticks and thorns and logs and just crackles, but merrily burns the items. It's like the laughter of fools. It's destructive, and yet it sounds delightful, and it sounds encouraging and fun. And many of us like to watch a fire, but the song of fools is like a fire. Or the laughter of fools. It burns up. It's of short duration. And so Solomon is saying, laughter, merriment, and song done in a foolish way, these things are not something that you give your life to. It's so meaningless. Better to be thoughtful, better even to be sad, better to listen to wisdom. Keep those things in mind. And verse 7, extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Money blinds the eyes. And many people there are that have sought to live lives of value and lives of honor, and yet they have been corrupted, bought and paid for with money.